So we don't understand what it is to do something just because you feel you ought to do it. This is the very foundation of Indian culture. The foundation of Indian culture is to do things based on duty, not on the fruit. If the husband takes care of the family, it is not because he wants something at the end of it, it's because he feels this is what he ought to do. Same thing with the wife, same thing with the children, same with parents. And it is because of this that society in this country remained wholesome for centuries together. It's only now that we've polluted it with this karma phala, fruit of action. What's in it for me is what dictates action. Even when you come to the spiritual path, those people who join the spiritual path, the first thing is, when will I start lecturing? Is that why you enter the spiritual path? So, what he's saying here is, you see, if you look at it, each one of us is placed in a certain situation. We are member of a family, we're living in a certain building society, we are citizens of Mumbai city, Maharashtra state, the nation, we are human beings. In each role that we play, we have a certain inherent obligation, inbuilt obligation, which you are not aware of. You are not aware of it because your focus is on karma phala. Focus is on desire-ridden activity, on the fruit of the action. And as long as you are focused on the fruit of the action, you yourself rob yourself of the sheer joy and the pleasure and the fulfillment of performing an action for its own sake. That's the first thing. And as we go along, we'll see what happens when you work for the fruit, what happens when you do something for the sheer love of it, or because you feel you ought to do it. So, duty versus fruit. You have to shift lanes if you want to succeed in life, if you want to be happy in life, if you want to evolve spiritually. Now, in this definition, he is spelling out the highest quality of action, which is selfless action. In order to understand that, we have to first get back to what are the other kinds of activities that we perform. Action. There are three types of action: selfish action, unselfish action, selfless action. Selfish action doesn't need to be explained, we all know what it is. Right? You perform an action because you want something at the end of it. There is a fruit, there is a result, there is a profit motive attached to the action, and such a person is called a bhogi. The action is never pure. It's driven by a desire to perform that action. It's driven by an expectation of a fruit that should accrue as a result of the action. As against this, you have a person, so in other words, a bhogi is one who's only concerned with personal reward for himself, not even for his family members. Slightly better than this is an unselfish action which is performed by a yogi, where you have stepped out of your personal interest. You've stepped out of this obsession with just I, me and myself, and you widened your horizons to do service, or at least make a difference in the lives of others. Recently on CNN, Mr. Ratan Tata was interviewed, and one of the things that he said is that I'm not motivated just by the desire to make profit for my organization or for the group of industries. I'm motivated by wanting to make a difference to people. And he says, every time, the interviewer said, but you've done very well. He says, yeah, from a certain perspective, perhaps I've done well. But when I go out into the villages, when I go out and see people who are deprived of basic necessities of life, I feel I haven't done my bit. And that is an unselfish action. Whether you do anything or not is not the point. The point is, what can you do anyway? The point is, in your mind, in your thinking, you have reached out to people who are less privileged than you. You have reached out to a larger cross-section of people. And there is this basic interest in wanting to do something for others, wanting to make a difference. Whether you do something or not is not the point. And that's a very, very noble thought motivation to have in your actions. And the moment you step out of this selfish cocoon that you've put yourself in and think of others, they say, nature rewards you richly. You are blessed with a million things that you didn't even know existed. You didn't even think of the possibility of your getting so many things. Unselfish action has fabulous rewards. Only if you have this courage and the conviction to step out of this obsession with self. Then, as a yogi, an unselfish person lives life, then slowly he begins to understand that there is this magnificent, benevolent force that has created the universe and is taking care of every little aspect of the universe. And there is really nothing that I can do to change things or to improve things, because that power is doing a fabulous job as it is. So even that unselfish desire wanes away. And yet, as long as he lives, he must act. So what will he do? He will just do what he ought to do. In the same way as an actor on the stage. An actor gets onto the stage and he has a script, he has his lines that have been written by the script writer, the director has set out for him, and he just goes through his role to the best of his ability. He has no interest in the happenings on stage. And that is pure action. Similarly, when you awaken to this benevolent force, this mighty power that is the foundation of the whole universe, you understand that it really doesn't need your help. And what will you do? You will just go through the script. You will go through what you have to do. You have been placed in a certain position, you have to do certain things. You have a script to go through. And you go through your lines to the best of your ability. Not wanting anything for yourself, nor are you doing it because you want to please anyone else or to do good to anybody else. Because you know, frankly, because you know you are incapable of doing good either to yourself or to anybody else. But you just do what you have to do. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is when a sannyasi, meaning a person who has awakened to this fourth plane of consciousness, who has awakened to the possibility of complete total liberation, sets his sights on getting there, then he is no longer interested in the happenings of the world. He has no desire to do anything either for himself or for anyone else. He has only one desire, and that is to get to that state of self-realization. Since self-realization is beyond the world, whatever he does in the world is considered as selfless action, desireless action, because he has no desire with reference to the world. This is what, and as you go from selfish to unselfish to selfless, the power with which you act, the efficiency that arises out of such action is mind-boggling. Recently, a few days ago, there was a small item that came in the newspaper, and it was really something different. It spoke about how in MTNL, the boss of MTNL has started a new practice of every morning before they start work. You know what happens? They have a prayer session. And he started it, no compulsion, no force. He didn't even tell people. Whoever wanted, whoever came to know, joined. And the amazing part is, they found that number one, punctuality improved because everybody wanted to be in time for the prayer. Secondly, the customer service, the quality of the service that they gave the customer shot up miraculously. You know why? In any action, if you decide to dedicate that action to the power beyond, what will come out of you is excellence. So in other words, it is only when we are selfish that you are inefficient. It's only when you are selfish that you do things wrong. It's only when you are selfish that you goof up. As you move from selfish actions to unselfish and selfless, you reach that state of perfection in action. Remember one thing, in this day and age, there is this overwhelming demand from the world, from society, from the organization that you work for perfection. And there is an intolerance for inefficiency and mistakes. So that pressurizes you. Now, how can you, a person who is motivated by selfishness, how can you come up with this superlative performance? There's only one way of doing it. Change your attitude towards your work. You can go through any number of management courses, you can do what you like and stand on your head. You will not come out with superlative performance until you change your attitude towards it. Convert selfishness to unselfishness. If you're already unselfish, try and rise to the level of selflessness, and by God, you'll get to that state of excellence. Perfection in action. Then, he says, he uses two words, not niragni, not akriya. Akriya means a person who is inactive. That is the state of tamas. In the state of tamas, the mind is dull, the body is inactive, there's nothing forthcoming. It's like you're a zombie sleepwalking. So he says, a sannyasi is not an inactive person. The general impression of a sannyasi, a yogi, is, oh, he doesn't participate in anything in the world. He sits in a corner and meditates. In other words, an inactive person is considered to be a sannyasi. No, he is not that. Nor is he a niragni. Agni means fire. Fire is symbolizes an ideal in life. So a rajasic person is a person who works with a selfish motive. He doesn't have an agni, means he doesn't have a higher perspective. He doesn't have a higher goal. He has no ideal beyond his selfish, self-centered interest to work for. And such a person's mind is agitated. To the extent you're selfish, to that extent you will be agitated. Now work backwards. If you're agitated, it means you're selfish. So when the mind is agitated, the agitations of the mind lead to inefficient activity by the body. Because the intellect, when the mind is agitated, the intellect is not thinking clearly, and when the intellect doesn't think clearly, the actions that come out of agitated mind and a confused intellect is inefficiency. Whereas, what he's speaking of is a person who does his karyam karma, selfless actions, is a sattvic individual. A sattvic individual's mind is calm, body performs efficient, dynamic, perfect activity. Isn't this where you want to be? Now, if you want to be here, you have to ensure that your mind is calm. If you want your mind to be calm, you have to set aside your selfishness and work for a higher perspective. Another way of looking at it, there is another interpretation of it. Niragni, a sannyasi is supposed to be, niragni means not cook his own food. Traditionally, a sannyasi is one who doesn't have the fire in his own home. That's why he's called niragni. So what he's saying is, he's not a person who merely goes through the actions of a sannyasi and doesn't have the spirit. See, it's very easy to don ochre robes and go through the rituals of a sannyasi. But it's very difficult to get the spirit with which a sannyasi functions. So he's saying, he's not a person who merely doesn't cook his own food and goes around begging. nor is in a kriya. A kriya means a sannyasi is not supposed to have any altruistic motive to work. So also perfection, the state of perfection is depicted as actionlessness, because the state of perfection is desirelessness, thoughtlessness, actionlessness. So it's naishkarmya is what is said to be the state of perfection, and it is misunderstood by the common person to be inactive. It's not that. It simply means such a person does not perform actions that are driven by selfish motives. So, whichever interpretation you give it, a person who performs his karyam karma without depending on the karma phala, without depending upon the fruit of the action, such a person is not a niragni, means not a rajasic person, not an akriya, not a tamasic person. He is a sattvic individual. Now, he is talking about two things. He's defining sannyasa, defining yoga as a person who just performs his duty versus a person who performs desire-ridden activity. So let's take a quick look at what this is. When you are motivated by a desire, as we've seen earlier, the mind is agitated and you don't get the fruit. Whereas when you perform your duty, your mind is calm, you get the fruit. When you have a desire for the fruit of action, you really don't get the fruit. Take a sports person who's on the verge of an important milestone, like Kumble's, 400 wickets. If his mind is on the 400th wicket, what will happen to his action? His action gets impaired and he will never get the 400th wicket. The fact that he got it means obviously while he was bowling, his attention was not on the future, not on the fruit, it was on the action. So your mind is calm, you get the fruit. When your focus is on the fruit of action, you must remember that the fruit is something that you have no control over. So as long as your attention is on the fruit, you will be dependent on the environment. You'll be miserable. And you'll devolve because you're adding more desires to your system. When you're performing actions driven by duty, you are independent. It doesn't matter to you. See, this is a fabulous state to be in, where you perform the action and you get complete, total fulfillment from the very action itself. So whatever be the fruit of the action, it may be success, it may be failure, that's not in your hands. It depends on the environment, it depends on the contribution of so many other people. Whether you get the fruit or not, you still have reached that fulfillment. You've still got the maximum out of the action. But if you're dependent upon the fruit, you're going to be miserable. You're completely dependent. So here is a person who gains complete fulfillment from the action itself. The fruit, whether people appreciate it or don't appreciate it, whether people say it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. See, first of all, you must understand that anybody who performs actions of a certain caliber, the general public, the lay person, will not understand. A lay person does not understand the difference between mediocrity and excellence because he doesn't reach the state of excellence. I'm sure you've come across instances where you know yourself that you haven't performed up to the mark and people clap and say, oh, you've done very well. And there are other instances when you know you've done your best and you've really put in your hard work and the action is really excellent. Nobody has even noticed. The greatest of people have performed actions, have done incredible service to humanity, and they've gone completely unnoticed. And the aam janta, as you call it, they do a little bit here and there, and what happens? They become celebrities. So when you understand that, you understand it's not worth depending upon the fruit. It doesn't matter. as long as you have the satisfaction that you've performed action to the best of your ability, that is fulfillment in itself. So with this, we move now to the second verse.
Yam sanyasamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava naya sanyasta sankalpaha yogi bhavati kaschana.
Understand what they call sannyasa, renunciation, is yoga, path of action. O Pandava, son of Pandu. One cannot become a yogi without renouncing sankalpa, desirous thoughts. So now, having given the definition of a yogi and a sannyasi, that a sannyasi, a yogi, is one who just does what he ought to do without depending upon the food. He understands that you and I have a problem with that. What is the problem? What is it that comes in the way of our performing this action? Pure action, just for the sake of action, is our desires come in the way. So he says, first thing that he says is, earlier he has said, given one definition for a yogi and sannyasi. Now he says, understand what they call sannyasa is yoga. There is not much difference between the two. It's like this. Those of us who are looking externally, looking out into the world for fulfillment, and we rush after objects of the world, we have desires and we are cultivating desires. See, it's not just the fact that you have desire, but there is wanton disregard to the scriptural injunction and you go about cultivating desires. Such a person is called a bhogi, a worldly, extroverted, materialistic person. As against this, the moment you understand that the world and what it has to offer does not have the power to fulfill you. As the scriptures say, you children of immortality, how can you be fulfilled by objects of the world? And yet we have sometimes very senior executives, like recently it happened in Washington DC. There was a gentleman, we happened to go to his house, and the US Open was going on. We were sitting there watching the match. And suddenly I realized, I said, this looks fabulous. It seems as if you're sitting right there watching the match. So I said, there's something different. This is a fabulous TV set. And he says, yeah, this is what is called as, what is it called? High definition plasma LCD, and he rattled off a whole lot of names to me. And you know what his wife said? You made his day, because he's so excited about this television set. The point is, yes, it's a fabulous creation. Yes, it's so clear. It's as if you're sitting right there watching the match. But to get excited about it is so childish. It's like a little child who's got excited because you've given him, what is it called? Ruby. Some game that you come up with. And the child is so excited about it. There's no difference between an adult getting excited about a TV set and a child getting excited about a toy. You can have all of that. But somewhere within you, you must understand that this is not what life is all about. This is not what I'm struggling for, I'm striving for, I'm working so hard just to get one television set and get excited about it. Or buy a new car and get excited about it. That's not what life is all about. So when you understand that, and you understand that there is fulfillment within, that's the turning point. You are a yogi. You are on the path. You have desires. But the direction in which you're moving is very different from the direction of a bhogi. You're trying to reduce your desires. And as you are working towards reducing your desires, you reach the state of sannyasa, where you have eliminated the bulk of your desires. And at this stage, you embark on meditation and knowledge and wisdom, and you get to the state of ajnani, where you have zero desires. So already saying here is, as against the bhogi, the yogi and the sannyasi are moving in the same direction, and therefore he says, understand what they call sannyasa, renunciation, is yoga. Sannyasa is yoga. The yogi, after a certain amount of effort and time, he will reach the state of sannyasi and then progress to the level of ajnana. Then he says, one cannot become a yogi. Even this stage you can't reach without renouncing sankalpa. Sankalpa is desirous thoughts. Sankalpa in the dictionary is defined as a thought, idea.